Imagine moving to a new city to chase your dreams and ending up sharing an apartment with your best friend. Sounds exciting, right? But what if that friendship begins to transform in ways neither of you ever expected? In this story, I'll share how my move to London didn't just change my life, it changed his. Stay with me for a journey filled with self-discovery, love, and the unexpected twists of the heart. Before we dive into this captivating story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us bring more stories of connection, love, and transformation to life. Moving to London felt like stepping into a movie, one where I wasn't sure of the script but was excited to play my part. I had spent months preparing for this moment, leaving my small hometown behind, packing my life into 2 suitcases, and saying goodbye to the comfort of familiarity. London was going to be my fresh start, a chance to embrace new opportunities and, hopefully, new versions of myself. But I wasn't doing it alone. Ethan, my best friend since high school, was already waiting for me. He had moved to London a year earlier for work, and when I told him I was considering making the leap, he immediately offered to let me stay with him. "It'll be like old times," he had said over the phone, his voice warm and reassuring. Ethan had always been that way, confident, grounded, the kind of person who could make you feel safe no matter what. I admired him for it, even if I sometimes felt like I lived in his shadow. When I arrived at our apartment, Ethan greeted me with his usual charm, a grin stretched across his face as he pulled me into a bear hug. "Welcome to London, mate," he said, his enthusiasm contagious. The apartment was small but cozy, with mismatched furniture and the faint smell of freshly brewed coffee lingering in the air. It already felt like home. "Thanks for letting me crash here," I said, dropping my bags by the door. "I promise I'll pull my weight, cleaning, groceries, whatever you need." Ethan waved me off. "Don't worry about it. Just focus on getting settled. We'll figure out the rest." That first evening, we stayed up late catching up, laughing about old memories and sharing stories about our lives over the past year. Ethan had always been the ladies' man, effortlessly charming with his rugged good looks and easygoing personality. He spoke about a few women he had dated in London, none of whom had stuck around for long. I listened, offering polite nods and laughs. But deep down, I couldn't help feeling a pang of something. Jealousy? Longing? I wasn't sure. I'd come out to myself a year ago, but hadn't told Ethan yet. It wasn't that I didn't trust him. I just didn't know how to bring it up. The timing never felt right. By the time we called it a night, I was exhausted but happy. Ethan and I had always had a close bond, and being with him again reminded me of how much I had missed his presence. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this move was going to change more than just my address. The first few weeks flew by in a blur. Ethan and I fell into a comfortable routine, mornings spent rushing out the door for work, evenings spent cooking simple dinners together, and weekends exploring the city. It felt good, normal. But somewhere beneath the surface, I could feel the dynamics shifting. I started noticing things about Ethan that I hadn't before. The way his smile lingered when he looked at me, the way he seemed to find reasons to be close, the way his laughter felt different when it was just the two of us. One evening, after a long day, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie. Ethan had thrown an arm casually over the back of the couch, his fingers just brushing my shoulder. It was such a small, natural gesture, but it sent a shiver down my spine. I could feel my heartbeat quicken, my thoughts racing as I wondered if he had noticed. Did it mean something? Or was it just me overthinking again? "Hey," Ethan said, breaking me out of my thoughts. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. "You've been quiet? Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just tired, I guess." He studied me for a moment, his brow furrowing slightly. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. I wanted to tell him everything. About how I felt, about the questions swirling in my mind, about the way he made me feel in ways I couldn't quite explain, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I just nodded. Yeah, I know. Ethan's gaze lingered for a moment before he turned back to the TV, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. The silence between us felt charged, like something unspoken was building, waiting to be acknowledged. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe Ethan was feeling it too. The credits rolled, and we got up to head to bed. As I passed Ethan in the hallway, his hand brushed against mine. A brief, fleeting touch that sent a jolt through me. He didn't say anything, just glanced at me with a look I couldn't quite decipher before disappearing into his room. I lay awake that night, my mind racing. That touch. It had felt deliberate, meaningful. Was I imagining things? Or was there something shifting between us, something neither of us was ready to name? I didn't know what was happening, but one thing was certain. This wasn't just friendship anymore. The next morning, I woke up with Ethan's touch lingering in my mind. It had been so brief, so subtle, yet it had unraveled something deep inside me. I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my head, analyzing every detail. Did he mean to do it? Was it just an accident? Or worse, was I reading too much into something completely innocent? When I stepped into the kitchen, Ethan was already there, leaning against the counter with a coffee mug in hand. His hair was slightly messy, and he was still wearing his gray sweatpants and a plain white t-shirt. It was such a simple sight, yet it made my heart skip a beat. He glanced up when he heard me enter, flashing me a warm smile. "Morning, sleepyhead," he said, his tone casual, as though nothing had happened the night before. "Coffee?" I nodded, trying to push the thoughts aside. "Thanks," I said, taking the mug he offered me. I focused on the warmth of the cup in my hands, hoping it would calm the nervous energy bubbling inside me. The morning passed uneventfully, but the weight of my thoughts followed me wherever I went. Ethan acted completely normal, laughing at the same old jokes and teasing me like he always did. If he felt the same tension I did, he was hiding it well. Meanwhile, I was unraveling on the inside. Later that evening, Ethan suggested we go out for drinks. "We haven't explored the nightlife here yet," he said with a grin. "Come on, it'll be fun." I hesitated. The thought of going out in a city as big as London felt overwhelming, but Ethan's excitement was infectious. "All right," I agreed. "Let's do it." The bar we went to was packed, the energy electric. Music played loudly as people crowded around the bar and danced in the open space. Ethan ordered us both drinks, leaning casually against the counter as he waited. I couldn't help but notice the way people glanced at him, drawn to his easy confidence. He seemed completely in his element, while I felt out of place. "Relax," he said, handing me my drink. "We're here to have fun." I forced a smile, taking a sip. The alcohol burned as it went down, but it was a welcome distraction. We found a small table near the back of the bar and sat down, chatting about nothing in particular. The more I drank, the easier it became to push my worries aside. At some point, Ethan got up to grab another round of drinks. As I watched him weave through the crowd, I noticed a group of women at the bar staring at him, whispering to each other. One of them approached him, her hand brushing his arm as she laughed at something he said. I looked away, trying to ignore the tight knot forming in my chest. When Ethan returned, he had an amused look on his face. "You wouldn't believe what just happened," he said, setting the drinks down. "That girl over there asked for my number." I raised an eyebrow, forcing a light-hearted tone. "Let me guess. You gave it to her?" He shook his head, laughing. "Nah, I told her I wasn't interested." Something about the way he said it caught my attention. His voice had an edge of finality, as though he wasn't just talking about her, but something bigger. I wanted to ask why he wasn't interested, but I bit my tongue. The night continued, and the drinks kept flowing. By the time we left the bar, I felt lightheaded and bold, the alcohol loosening my inhibitions. The cool night air hit me as we stepped outside, and Ethan offered me his jacket when he noticed me shivering. "Thanks," I said, pulling it around me. It smelled like him, faintly of cologne and something warm I couldn't quite place. The gesture felt oddly intimate, and I couldn't stop myself from glancing at him. We walked in silence for a while, the city lights casting long shadows on the pavement. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan broke the quiet. "You've been acting weird lately," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Is everything okay?" The question caught me off guard. I stopped walking, turning to face him. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, his eyes searching mine. "I don't know. You just seem different. Like you're keeping something from me." My heart pounded in my chest. This was it, the moment I had been dreading and hoping for all at once. I could feel the words on the tip of my tongue, but fear held me back. What if this ruined everything? What if he didn't understand? I started, my voice faltering. Ethan took a step closer, his gaze steady and unwavering. "You can tell me," he said, his tone gentle. "Whatever it is, you know I've got your back." The sincerity in his voice almost broke me. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage I had. "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you, and I don't know how you're going to take it." He frowned, concern flickering across his face. "What is it?" Before I could answer, a car honked loudly nearby, breaking the moment. We both turned instinctively, the spell shattered. When I looked back at him, the courage I had felt was gone, replaced by a gnawing sense of doubt. "Never mind," I said quickly, turning away. "It's nothing." Ethan didn't press me, but I could feel his eyes on me as we walked the rest of the way home in silence. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about his words, or the way he had looked at me, like he was waiting for an answer I wasn't ready to give. The following day, I woke up with a sense of unease hanging over me. The night before kept replaying in my mind. Ethan's question, his steady gaze, and my inability to say what I really felt. I tried to shake it off as I got ready for the day, but every time I saw him, the weight of my unspoken words pressed harder against my chest. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed. He greeted me with his usual carefree attitude, joking about how much I had drunk the night before and teasing me for nearly tripping on the stairs when we got home. "You're not as graceful as you think you are," he said with a laugh, ruffling his messy hair as he sipped his coffee. I forced a laugh, playing along, but deep down I was restless. I could tell he was trying to keep things light, but there was something different in the way he looked at me, like he was waiting for me to say something, to explain what had been weighing on me. I couldn't tell if it was my own paranoia or if he was genuinely curious. As the day went on, we fell into our usual routine. Ethan had the day off from work, so we decided to stay in, binge-watch a show we both loved, and order takeout. It was easy, familiar, the kind of day I had always appreciated with him. But beneath the surface, the tension I felt was growing. Later that evening, as we sat on the couch finishing our food, Ethan leaned back, stretching his arms over the backrest. I could feel his arm brushing against my shoulder, just like it had the other night. This time, the touch felt deliberate, lingering longer than it needed to. My heart raced, and I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. "All right, out with it," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. His tone was light, but there was a seriousness in his expression that caught me off guard. "You've been acting weird since last night. What's going on?" I hesitated, unsure how to respond. The words were there, tangled in my throat, but fear held me back. "I don't know what you mean," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Ethan raised an eyebrow, his lips curving into a smirk. Come on, don't give me that. I know you better than that. Something's on your mind, and I'm not letting you off the hook this time. His persistence both annoyed and comforted me. I couldn't hide from him, not when he knew me so well. I took a deep breath, my hands gripping the edge of the couch as I tried to steady myself. It's not easy to talk about, I admitted finally, my eyes fixed on the floor. Ethan's smirk softened into something more genuine. Hey, he said, his voice lower now, almost soothing. You can tell me anything, you know that. I looked up at him, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away. There was something in his eyes I couldn't quite place, a mixture of curiosity, concern, and something deeper. It gave me the courage to keep going. I've been thinking about some things, I said, choosing my words carefully. About myself. About us. Ethan tilted his head, his brows furrowing slightly. Us? He repeated. What do you mean? I hesitated again, feeling the weight of his gaze. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I mean, I feel like things are different between us lately. I don't know if it's just me, but... I trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. For a moment, Ethan didn't say anything. The silence between us was thick, charged with unspoken tension. Then he leaned closer, his arm still brushing against mine. Different how? He asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. My breath hitched, and I felt a wave of heat rush through me. His closeness, his tone, the way he was looking at me, it was too much. I don't know, I said, my voice trembling. I don't know. Ethan reached out, placing a hand on my knee. The gesture was small, but it sent a jolt through me. You can tell me, he said again, his voice steady. Whatever it is, I won't judge you. The sincerity in his words almost broke me. I wanted to believe him, to trust that he would understand. But before I could say anything, his phone buzzed on the table, breaking the moment. He glanced at it, frowning slightly, and let out a sigh. Hold that thought, he said, grabbing his phone and standing up. I'll be right back. As he walked out of the room, I sat there frozen, my mind racing. That touch, his hand on my knee, had felt deliberate, intimate. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting between us, even if neither of us was ready to admit it yet. When Ethan returned, his expression was unreadable. He sat down beside me, his arm once again brushing mine. Where were we? He asked casually, but there was an edge to his voice that made my heart race. I looked at him, searching his face for answers, but all I could see was the same unspoken question in his eyes. Something had shifted between us, and there was no going back now. Ethan's question lingered in the air, his casual tone clashing with the tension that had built between us over the past few days. I could feel my chest tightening, my thoughts spiraling as I tried to piece together what to say next. His closeness, his hand on my knee earlier, it had been so deliberate, so charged with meaning. Or was I imagining it? Was I projecting my feelings onto something innocent? Where were we? He repeated, his voice softer now, his eyes locked on mine. I swallowed hard, my palms clammy against the fabric of my jeans. Ethan, The words caught in my throat. What if I said it, and it ruined everything? What if he pulled away, disgusted or confused, and I lost the one person I trusted the most? But before I could say anything, Ethan leaned back, his arm resting on the back of the couch. His fingers brushed against my shoulder, and this time the touch wasn't accidental. It lingered. I turned to look at him, searching his face for any sign of what he might be thinking. His expression was calm, but there was something in his eyes, and intensity that wasn't there before. "You're overthinking again," he said with a small smile, his voice gentle. "Just say whatever's on your mind. I won't bite." The words were meant to be lighthearted, but they only made my heart race faster. How could he be so calm when my entire world felt like it was hanging in the balance? I took a shaky breath, my hands curling into fists in my lap. "Ethan, have you ever felt like—" I hesitated, my voice faltering. "Like there's something more to this?" I gestured vaguely between us, unable to meet his eyes. There was a long pause. I could feel the weight of his gaze, the silence thick with anticipation. When I finally looked up, I saw a flicker of something in his expression. Surprise? Understanding? I couldn't tell. "Maybe," he said softly, his voice barely audible. His words sent a shockwave through me. Did he mean it? Or was he just trying to keep me talking? Before I could respond, a loud knock at the door shattered the moment. Both of us turned toward the sound, the spell broken. Ethan stood up, his movements hesitant. "I'll get it," he said quickly, disappearing toward the door. As I sat there, my mind raced with 1,000 questions. His answer, maybe, wasn't much, but it was enough to leave me reeling. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this confusion. But what did it mean for us? And more importantly, where would we go from here? Ethan returned from the door looking uneasy, avoiding my gaze as he sat back down. The tension between us was palpable, but neither of us spoke. My heart pounded in my chest, every nerve in my body screaming at me to say something, anything, but fear kept me frozen. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "About what you said earlier," he began, his voice hesitant. "You're not crazy. I've been feeling something too." I blinked, stunned by his admission. "You have?" I asked, barely able to believe it. He nodded, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, but I didn't know how to bring it up. I didn't want to mess things up between us." The weight of his words hit me like a tidal wave. All this time I thought I was alone in my feelings, but now everything was out in the open. "So, what now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan looked at me, his expression soft yet uncertain. "I don't know, but maybe we figure it out together." The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Ethan and I spent hours talking, breaking down every barrier we had unknowingly built between us. It wasn't easy, nothing about this was, but it was real. For the first time, I felt like I could be completely honest, and so could he. One evening, as we sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights, Ethan reached for my hand. "I don't know what this means for me," he admitted, his voice steady. "But I know I don't want to lose you." I smiled, squeezing his hand gently. "You won't." In that moment, I realized that love doesn't come with easy answers or guarantees. It's messy, uncertain, and sometimes terrifying. But it's also worth it. And as Ethan leaned closer, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name, I knew we were on the brink of something incredible. This wasn't just a new chapter. It was the start of a new story. If this story moved you, remember that love doesn't always follow the rules. It challenges us to grow, to face the unknown, and to embrace what truly matters. What would you do if your heart led you somewhere unexpected? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications to join us for more stories about love, self-discovery, and connection.